Well, I suppose you have to give the Chancellor credit where credit is due. The spring statement was communicated very well, and for a moment he really did sound like a tax-cutting Chancellor, even if he isn't really one. And I think it's always interesting to see before the statement comes out, analogies used about the Chancellor being a magician pulling rabbits out of hats. And that's really the thing. Magicians dazzle you with a performance. They pretend like they've done the impossible, but really all they're doing is pulling a sleight of hand. And that's what the statement really was. It's a mirage, a sort of an oasis of tax cuts, which isn't really there in relief in a sort of a desert of the cost of living and a crisis and spiraling inflation. I mean, for context, the Chancellor suggests that he has cut taxes for hardworking families. I mean, as you just heard, the fuel duty cut is intended to help those who are least well off, but in reality, it's a tax cut for motorists who are more well off, people who drive less, or rather people who are less well off tend to drive less. And the OBR finds that the Chancellor's tax cuts announced in the statement have undone just over a quarter of the overall value of personal tax rises that he announced last year, and around just a sixth of the overall net tax rises he's announced since becoming Chancellor. So we have to remember that corporation tax hikes, freezes to personal tax thresholds, and the national insurance levy still drastically outweigh the cuts he announced yesterday.
And I always do like the term hard-working families that politicians use, because it does beg the question, who are these not hard-working families? But anyway, I do want to ask you, who was the winner out of this, basically? Because as you mentioned there, living standards down at their lowest point since the 50s, highest tax burden since the 40s. Lots of people are losing out for factors beyond the Chancellor's control sometimes. But has anybody come out of this feeling wealthier? Do you think some families will genuinely feel wealthier?
No, I don't think anyone will come out of this statement or the cost of living crisis feeling any wealthier. I think the way the budget or the statement falls, it helps people on middle to slightly higher incomes more than it helps on the lowest incomes. So I think people on the lowest incomes receive about £125 over the course of the year of extra support, whereas those on middle incomes get somewhere around £300 of extra support in terms of tax cuts. So, as I say, not really any winners. Some people doing slightly better than others.